Hi guys, and welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing well. Firstly, let me say guys, I know it's a long time since I uploaded a video and I have been going through a lot mentally, and the past 10 months I want to say or more, and so it's been really difficult for me to be consistent with uploading cases on my channel, but I'm starting to feel a little bit better, and so I'm going to try to upload more cases again. And I wanted to start with a case in two countries that I've never covered on my channel yet, which are Egypt and Germany. So let's go. Today we are going to be talking about a lady called Marwa El Sherbini. So she was an Egyptian lady born in 1977 in Egypt, and both her parents were actually pharmacists, and she also went to university and trained to be a pharmacist as well. So graduated in pharmacology. She actually played for the national handball team of Egypt, so she was doing very well career-wise in her personal life, and then she got married to her husband. I believe he was called Elwi, and in 2005 they decided to emigrate to Germany because essentially her husband got offered a lecturer position in a university there. So they went to Germany in 2005, and Marwa's husband was working as a lecturer at university. She was actually working in another university hospital in a pharmacy essentially, and because she graduated in Egypt, and because you know sometimes guys when you graduate, especially in a clinical profession in a different country, you have to kind of do a conversion course in another country. So essentially that's what Marwa was doing, but she was also working in the pharmacy while doing this kind of conversion course to convert her pharmaceutical qualifications in Germany. So everything was going good. They ended up having a little boy, and one day Marwa decided to go to the park with her son, and I believe he was around 2 years old at the time. So she's gone to the park with her son, you know, as you do, she's taken him out for the day, and she wanted to put him on the swings at the park. There was another gentleman at the park called Alex Wiens. Now Alex Wiens was a gentleman who was originally from Russia. He was born in 1980, and he comes across as someone who, I'll be honest, wasn't really doing much with his life from what we know. Okay, so in Germany he was exempt from going to the army because the military services at that time was compulsory, and I still believe it is to this day actually, and he was exempt from going. And the reason for the exemption was he was signed off with severe psychosis. Now obviously this is a condition which is very serious, so it's not anything to joke or laugh about, whatever. So when I say he comes across as someone who wasn't doing much, that I'll go into that in a minute, but that's why he was exempt from going to the army. He then in 2003 decided to emigrate to Germany, and through his ethnic origins it said that he was able to gain German citizenship, and that's how he also ended up in Germany. So he was also an immigrant in Germany actually, and supposedly he was working as a builder, warehouse kind of person, but at the time this case was taking place he was just on benefits, basically on welfare in Germany, so he wasn't really doing anything. And as we'll see later in the case, the diagnosis of psychosis, and I think there was also schizophrenia, becomes quite vague later in this case. So it's kind of a 50-50 ratio as to whether he had those actual conditions. So anyway, he's at the park, and he's actually at the park with his niece. Marwa, she wants to put her son on one of the swings, and Alex, he wants to put his niece on one of the swings. And so it ends up becoming this sort of argument between Marwa and Alex over the swings. Like, you know, one of those really silly kind of arguments you would have with someone, nothing too consequential. But essentially what happens is Alex starts calling Marwa a terrorist, a slut, and all of these kind of terms, which are quite extreme, right? There were other bystanders, like other people obviously in the park, because it's a park in the middle of the day, and people were also becoming quite alarmed, like they were seeing how he's behaving and everything, and they were like, what the hell? So they tried to interject and stop him, and he was just becoming really rude and verbally aggressive. So someone passed their phone to Marwa to call the police because it was just getting too much. Marwa's called the police. They've come. They've taken Marwa and her son away to get her, I think, out of that situation. So when this is happening, this is around August 2008 at this time. So because this was quite a serious verbal, aggression, essentially, verbal abuse, it goes to court. And when the court case is set, this is one of those kind of cases where you think, okay, the judge is gonna fine the defendant and they'll pay some compensation to the victim, to the claimant, and that's it. And that's where you would think the case would stop. But actually, that is not what happened at all. So in the court, they go to court, and I think this is at around the end of 2008, beginning of 2009. Marwa, her husband, her little boy at the time, who's now 3, have gone to court. And then there was the judge, a few prosecutors, and that's it. There was maybe maximum about 9 people in the whole court, because this wasn't like a very complex case in actual fact, right? So anyway, the judge has asked Marwa what has happened. Marwa has explained what's happened. He's asked Alex, have you said blah, 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 what's happened? And instead of denying what he said or accepting and assuming what he said or anything, he just starts coming out with all this kind of Islamophobic hatred in the middle of the courtroom, which you'd think, okay, you're just damaging your case further, because initially he was supposed to have a fine of, I think, 360 euros, and then by that point it had gone up to about 780 euros for the fine because of something else, I think, that happened in between. And you'd think he would try to just dissolve this and just pay the fine, right? If you think of it in terms of legal processes, 780 euros is not that big. So it's like, just pay the fine and be done. That's it. But he starts coming out with all this Islamophobic verbal abuse again, and saying that immigrants shouldn't be in Germany, even though he himself is actually an immigrant, and all this kind of thing. The judge is just sitting there and is just like, this is just like, you're just ridiculous, basically. And is like, you're gonna get fined. And because it's getting worse and worse, and he's doing this in front of the judge, it's like the case is just becoming more extensive. So anyway, it gets to the point where, because the judge has already asked Marwa her point of view and what's gone on in this, and they've kind of finished asking Marwa, like questioning her and asking her what they need to ask, so she's actually allowed to leave the courtroom, whereas Alex obviously needs to stay there because he's going to be tried or whatever, and they have to say what the outcome of the court case is and blah blah blah, right? So Marwa, she's going to leave by the courtroom door with her husband and her little 3-year-old boy, right? And as she's about to leave, Alex Wiens pulls out an 18 centimetre or 7-inch kitchen knife, and he had a backpack on. Now, when they came to the court, because this was supposed to be a court case that wasn't very high profile or expected to be dangerous or anything, none of the people that were taking part in the court case were checked security wise. There were no security guards in the court, nothing. So anyway, he's pulled out this 18 centimetre kitchen knife from his backpack, and as Marwa's walking down the aisle bit to go out, he's taken out the knife and stabbed her 15 times, literally, right? So her husband, as Alex is stabbing Marwa, her husband tries to jump in to block him from further attacking Marwa. And bear in mind, this little 3-year-old boy, their son, is standing right next to them, right? Imagine how horrifying it is for this little child. And obviously there wasn't any security guards or anything, so the only people in this courtroom were the judge, some prosecutors, Marwa, her husband, and the little boy. So the prosecutors try to jump in with chairs, a table, to block him with whatever they can and get him out of the way. But by that point, Marwa's husband is standing in front of her, and Alex has still got the knife, and he ends up stabbing Okaz, which is Marwa's husband. I think I gave him another name earlier, but I think it's Okaz. He stabbed Marwa's husband 16 times. Now, by this time, security has been called. Judges called the security and everything, and they've come into the door. So there's all these security that have come in, and Marwa's husband, so Okaz, he's holding the handle of that kitchen knife, and Alex Wiens has got the blade in, so it's one of them's got the handle, the other one's got the blade, is trying to pull the blade out of Alex's hand to obviously get it off him to stop the attack, right? So when all these security people come in, they haven't been in the courtroom and they don't know who's the claimant, who's the defendant. They're not involved in the case. They aren't the ones who've had to check people before they go in and all of this. So they actually don't know who's the claimant, who's the defendant, or what's gone on. They just know someone's got this kitchen knife and is stabbing someone. Now, Marwa's husband, he's got blood all over him, obviously because Alex has stabbed him multiple times. Alex has got blood over him because that's probably the blood of Marwa and her husband that's on him. And they can't work out who is the claimant and who's the defendant. So because Marwa's husband is holding the kitchen knife, he's got the handle, that he's actually the attacker when actually he's not the attacker at all. Alex who's actually the attacker. So what happens is one of these, it's not even a security guard, I think it's a police officer at this point, shoots Marwa's husband now in the leg. So now Marwa's husband has been shot in the leg. He's been stabbed 16 times by Alex. And Marwa has been stabbed 15 times, right? So the judge now has advised that Alex is actually the attacker and Marwa's husband and Marwa are the victims, the claimants, right? So they've managed to, I think they had to get 9 police officers to grab Alex and detain him and take him away, right? Now, Marwa, she was actually 3 months pregnant at the time of this court case. And sadly, at this point, she had lost her life, okay, as did her unborn child. Her husband was actually still alive by the grace of God, or I don't know what. He managed to survive the 16 stab wounds and being shot in the leg. And the little boy, apparently he had a few injuries. He wasn't shot or stabbed or anything, but he'd been knocked, you know, pushed into and everything during this whole situation. But he was okay, all right? So Marwa's husband, he was rushed to hospital and he was in a coma for 2 days and he made a full recovery after this, which is, imagine you've been stabbed 16 times and shot in the leg and you made a full recovery, which is an absolute miracle. Thank God. So now, instead of being this verbal abuse racism case, this has now become an attempted murder and murder case, which has taken place in a courtroom, which is crazy. So I believe the following year, or towards the end of 2009, we are now in the middle of a murder case. And Marwa's brother, her parents and the husband, they went to court, guys, with 8 lawyers. Can you imagine? I've never actually seen a trial where there's 8 lawyers involved, but they went to court with 8 lawyers because they were like, we're not having this. There were German lawyers, French lawyers, and I think some Egyptian lawyers. So there was all a mixture of different international lawyers that went to represent Marwa and her family in court. And then Alex, I don't know if he had just one lawyer, God knows. I mean, to be honest, whatever lawyer he had wasn't gonna help his case anyway. So this has been taken to court. So obviously it was said that for Marwa it was a murder case. In the case of her husband, it was classified as attempted murder. Now, so we've got this murder case going on, an attempted murder case, right? Okay. Now, obviously the lawyers were going to push for Alex to get the maximum sentence, whatever. Anyway, obviously for Marwa, so Alex has been convicted of murder. For her husband, it was attempted murder. And then remember, we've got that police officer that shot Marwa's husband in the leg, because obviously that's an attack as well. However, it was said in the court case that because of the whole scuffle that was going on, it was so messy at the time, that the police officer who shot Marwa's husband couldn't work out whether he was the attacker or Alex was the attacker. And so it was like an error because of the situation. It wasn't like he purposefully wanted to shoot Marwa's husband in the leg, so that was kind of thrown out, which is ridiculous. Obviously Alex was sentenced. I actually could not find what is the sentence. He got an indefinite, like, lifetime sentence. He got a lifetime sentence, okay? But then the court case ended and Alex wanted to appeal it, which, quite frankly, I don't know how someone can try to appeal this, especially as a high majority of what you've done as the defendant, you've done it in the middle of a courtroom as well, and your witnesses were judges and prosecutors, so I don't know what you're going to appeal. So his appeal was actually immediately thrown out. And then in the case of Marwa's family and Marwa's husband, they also appealed the case again, because they were like, this is not acceptable, like the judgment is just not acceptable, like there needs to be more. And so actually the judge advised that Alex is to verse financial compensation to Marwa's family, and I couldn't find the amount, but it was said that he had to verse financial compensation. Apparently when this case started in Germany, it was like on the back pages of newspapers. It wasn't considered a high profile case, and apparently there were a lot of protests going on in 2009, 2010 after this case started going to court by Muslim organisations in Germany. And there's also a Jewish organisation that actually came out and spoke up about this, because they were like, why should immigrants be treated like this? It's disgusting and blah blah blah. And then because of all these protests going on just in support of Marwa and her family and her husband, it then became very high profile, was on the news a lot, and this is how this case kind of came about basically. But it's a really shocking case. You've got a woman who's lost her life, with an unborn child that's lost its life, a husband that's a widower. You've got this poor 3-year-old little boy that had to go through the trauma. And I think sometimes people think that very small children, they don't recall memories. They can't remember things that happened when they were really small. And I think that's so false. Like, I have memories when I was 3 and 4 years old that are really random memories, but I still remember things. So it's like, this is such a traumatic event where this child was there when his mother was killed and his father got stabbed 16 times and got shot. Like, this is like crazy, you know? So that child still must be so traumatized by what happened to his mother and his father, which is so sad. And I think it's so horrific that in the times we live in still, that people can just not have respect for others. And, you know, how I still don't understand to this day how some people can speak to other people like that. If you don't like something someone does or you don't agree with it, fine, then say it. But there are certain terms that don't need to be used. And for me, people who use these racial slurs and disgusting terms, they lack education and they're ignorant and disgusting people. And honestly, it's just beyond me. And this is why I wanted to cover this case. And actually I was looking for other cases, and this is again one that came up randomly, and I just thought, oh my god, this was such an educated woman. Husband was, they had good jobs, they were just living their life, had a little boy, had a little baby on the way, everything was really good for them actually, and this man just destroyed their whole life because they were immigrants, bearing in mind he was an immigrant, which is not even like coherent, right? Anyway guys, I will leave this case here. Let me know guys down below, what are your thoughts and viewpoints on this case, if you heard about this case before today as well. If you've also got any case suggestions, as always, you can leave them down below, and I'm going to try to come back to you guys and be a bit more consistent. I have been looking into covering some cases more which relate to cults again, because I haven't done any cult cases for a long time on my channel, but I've been looking into researching different cults which haven't been heard of before and things like that, to try and come to you guys with some kind of cases like that. So let me know if there's any cases specifically you would like me to cover on my channel, especially obviously international cases, and I will see you guys very, very soon, of course, for another video.